again, I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Marnie. Thank you to the Friends of the Burlington Library. So I'll tell a little bit about my background and then how Casey and I got together and started writing books together. And then I'll start to talk about Tom Brady and 12. So first, everyone in here, Patriots fans, not Patriots fans? You shaking your head no? You hate the Patriots? Oh, you are a Patriots fan. Okay. Sometimes I go to these things and, there's one or two like Giants fans and they love to say, cheaters. So it's fun. So I grew up in Brockton and went to Boston College, and I was an English major. And when I got out of BC, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, like a lot of college kids, and went to work at a sub shop. And then I went to work at a auto detailing place. So I was working these jobs with a BC degree, and my dad was real happy about that. But I started freelancing for some, local publications and local newspapers, and eventually I got the police reporter's job at the Taunton Gazette in Taunton, Massachusetts. And I had never been to Taunton really much growing up. Growing up in Brockton, we would either go to Boston or Providence and just skip right past Taunton. But it was a great place to learn how to be a reporter. I worked there for about 4 years and covered a lot of really kind of crazy cases, a lot of murder cases and different things that happened. And then I went to the paper in Attleboro for a couple of years. And then in 1999, I got to the Boston Herald, and I was kind of thrown right into the fray, so to speak, of the daily breaking news cycle. And when, going from a paper like Attleboro, Taunton to the Herald, it's like night and day. It's like, the Pawtucket Red Sox to the Red Sox. All of a sudden, you're competing with the Boston Globe and New York Times and CNN, the Associated Press, and all that stuff. So I really learned a lot about how to write on deadline and write fast. And the first big story that I covered was actually the Worcester cold storage fire, where the 6 firefighters were killed fighting a fire in a vacant building. I'd be remiss tonight if I didn't mention, what's going on in Lawrence. And I actually almost had to cancel tonight because my wife is still a columnist at the Boston Herald, and she got called in. She's on her way up there right now, and I don't know if you guys know or not, but it's pretty bad. There's like 50 houses on fire is what I understand. So we have a 5-year-old, so I had to do some juggling. I couldn't leave him home alone. So thankfully, he's old enough. But thankfully, his aunt stepped up, so here I am. So thinking of all those people up there tonight, it's a very, when these things happen as a news reporter, it all brings it all back, all the things. And I'm thinking about my wife right now. I hope she's safe. I hope all those people are safe up there. So, but I covered that, and then to the point, 2001, I was a breaking news reporter, and when the planes hit the World Trade Center that morning, I got sent right down to New York. I was down there shortly after the buildings came down, and I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and I kind of led the Herald's coverage from New York down there, because obviously that morning we knew the planes had left out of Logan, so we knew there was going to be a lot of local people involved. So, as it did for everyone, that event changed my life, and I was a reporter at that point. That's what I did, and I loved it. And then I covered the station fire down in Rhode Island in 2003. I went to Washington D.C. when the D.C. sniper case happened. I don't know if you guys remember that one, but covered that. And then, in between all that, there was all sorts of serial killers and horrible pedophile priests and all that. I covered all that stuff. So around 2005, I was a little burned out, as you might imagine, and so I decided to go into politics. So exactly. So I tell everyone that my PTSD comes from covering politics, not from 9/11. So. But I was able to cover a couple presidential races, and I was the State House bureau chief for the Boston Herald and the City Hall bureau chief. And then fast forward to April 15th, 2013. That day I was the Boston Herald City Hall bureau chief, so I was very close to Mayor Menino, and I would be at City Hall every day. And it was a slow day. City Hall's closed that day. I was on my way to meet someone for coffee when we got word that there was 2 explosions at the finish line, and like a lot of people, I thought, I was hoping and thought that it was just an accident and nothing major, and obviously within minutes, my worst fears were confirmed like they were for everyone else. And I was thrust into that story and ended up covering that, and went out to Watertown in the middle of the night. And in the meantime, my wife, the columnist, was home with our 2-week-old son. So when Watertown happened, I had just got home from covering President Obama was in town for for a prayer service with Governor Patrick and Mayor Menino at the cathedral in the South End. And I had written my stories, and I finally get home around 10:30, 11 at night, and I was no help all week with this 2-week-old baby. And I finally got a chance to take the baby and sat down on the couch and said, all right, they released the pictures of the terrorists. So I said, I got some time here, it'll be all right. Lay on the couch, put the baby on my chest, turn on the TV, and I see MIT police officer shot. So I took the baby, gave him back to my wife, and I said, I gotta go. So we knew pretty quickly that it was tied to what happened. So after that was over, I continued covering politics, and I covered the mayor's race with after Mayor Menino left office, and one day Casey Sherman called me up, and Casey and I knew each other very well. Casey wrote a book called The Finest Hours, which was about a famous Coast Guard rescue off the coast of Chatham in the 1950s, and it was made into a great Disney movie. If you haven't read that book or seen the movie, it's excellent, excellent movie, family movie. The whole family can see it. And he called me and said, look, I think I'm going to do a book about the marathon bombings, and I need someone to do it with. Are you interested? And I'd always wanted to do a book, but I never really found the right story that I was passionate about. But in this case, as I said, I was close with Mayor Menino. I covered it all. I was in the middle of it. I was in Watertown. I was at the finish line after the bombs went off, within a few hours. And I covered the whole thing, and I was in a pretty unique position to be able to tell the story, I thought. So I said, yeah, so we did it, and it was an incredible experience. We got very close with a lot of the survivors. We spent a lot of time with them, and they became our friends, and a lot of them are still our friends today. And I'm really proud of that book. And then we, had the whole movie process, and that's another whole, I'll do another talk on that another time. But it was, I think, has anyone seen the movie? Anyone see Patriots Day? Yeah. So I think they did a good job in the movie. There was things that maybe I would have done different if I had been the director, but I think ultimately the message is right that, we were attacked and everybody came together and we caught the guys. So it's a good message. And at the end of the day, the survivors that we're friends with were all okay with it. They didn't think it was exploitative. They thought it was done tastefully, so that was all that I needed. I didn't care, how much money the movie made or how well it did or anything like that. It was more, I just didn't want to offend anybody. So after that ended, we got a call from the Frady's family. And, they're in Beverly, up this way, and Casey and I met with them. And I didn't really know much about Pete's story, but as soon as we met with them, within, 15 minutes, I said, well, we got our next book. It's an incredible story, incredible family. Pete takes that ALS diagnosis and turns it into the most successful social media philanthropy campaign in history. $220 million the Ice Bucket Challenge raised in one summer. So it was a really incredible story, and we tell that whole story about how that all happened, and so that was a lot of fun, and we are working on a movie on that as well. After that ended, actually, let me back up. Before we did the Frady's book, we were actually thinking about doing a book about the dark side of the NFL, because Deflategate happened in 2015, which is right after the Boston Strong came out. So we were kind of thinking about what to do. We were considering maybe doing a dark side of the NFL story with, Deflategate and Spygate and Bountygate and the Ray Rice case and the bullying situation down in Miami. So there was so many things we were just like, there's something going on with the NFL, the concussion issue. We tabled it, did the Frady's story, and finished that, and that book came out, and then the Super Bowl happened. So after that Falcons Super Bowl happened, Casey and I got on the phone. We said, well, I guess we got our ending for the book. So we revisited it, and soon enough we started doing it, and we started writing the book. So this book was a lot of fun to do, 12, and again, I apologize, I don't have any copies with me because the cover's awesome. Has anyone seen what it looks like yet? Marnie has the picture, so it's great. And so, we were able to get some cooperation from the Patriots. You know, they allowed us some time with Bob Kraft, and they made Tom Brady available to answer some questions for us. We spent a lot of time down at training camp with the players, and we interviewed Julian Edelman and Malcolm Mitchell and James White, and it was just a lot of fun. And we I don't want to say we reinvestigated Deflategate, but we did our homework, and we overturned every stone that we could. And the first question I want to ask is, did you get the guys who deflated the footballs? And the answer is no. Those guys are in, I guess, deep state is what you'll call them. I mean, they're gone. They're in the wind. So we tried very hard to reach those guys. We couldn't get them. Patriots obviously weren't helping with that end of it. And, Tom Brady didn't want to talk too much about Deflategate. He talked about, his legacy. And if you read the book, he talks a lot about, he doesn't talk about his legacy much, but he did a little bit to us. He talked about how the suspension was one of the low points of his career. But he mainly talked about the other trial and tribulation in his life that was going on at that time, which is his mother was suffering from cancer. And it was a very tough time for the family. So, here's a guy that had been Mr. Perfect his whole career. And remember when Spygate happened, that was really all about the Patriots, the organization. It was about Bill Belichick. They were the cheaters. Tom Brady wasn't really branded a cheater in Spygate. But when Deflategate happened, that was all about Tom Brady. Tom was the cheater. He was the one telling those guys to deflate the footballs. And so his personal legacy was under attack. So remember that game, 2015, the AFC Championship game against the Colts. The Patriots go out and they kill them. They beat them 42-7, not even a contest. I was at the game, actually. And then around 1 o'clock in the morning, Bob Kravitz, a columnist for the Indianapolis Star, sends out a tweet. And it says, sources tell me the Patriots are being investigated for using underinflated footballs during the AFC Championship game. When that tweet went out, myself and I think a lot of Patriots fans just kind of said, oh, yeah, here we go, rolled their eyes. What are they going to come up with next? Spygate was over, and they took their penalty for that, and they went to 2 more Super Bowls, but they're still cheaters, and now they're going to find another way to take them down and make them look like cheaters. But I thought it was ridiculous, and I think a lot of people did, including Tom Brady, who the next morning went on his normal WEEI interview and was asked about it, and he didn't know anything about it at that time, and he just answered, he said, now I think I've heard everything. That's what he said. And everyone thought that it was a joke, but it became pretty clear pretty quickly that it wasn't a joke. And in fact, it ended up becoming literally a federal court case, and it became really the biggest sports scandal that we've seen in professional sports in the last 20 years. It became bigger than Spygate and all those other ones that I said. So why did this happen over, deflated footballs? There's a debate as to whether or not deflated footballs give you a competitive advantage. Some people say it does, some people say it doesn't. But the facts are that it's something that had never been tested before in the NFL. The NFL had never looked at deflation levels. They've never tested them before. It was never an issue. No one ever talked about it. And there were instances in the past where balls were overinflated, balls were underinflated, but the league did nothing about it. Now, what happened here was the league was tipped off that maybe the balls were underinflated in the Baltimore Ravens game before the Colts game. Rather than tell the Patriots, hey, we think you guys are using underinflated footballs, you better watch it, we're going to be watching them, they set them up. They set them up with a sting operation, and they let them just do their thing. So this whole thing could have been avoided with a simple warning, but that's not what they wanted. They wanted to nail the Patriots. They wanted to catch the cheaters cheating. And why did they want to do that? Well, the answer is power. It's Roger Goodell. Roger Goodell, all those scandals that I just mentioned with, Bountygate and Bullygate and the Ray Rice case, the league came out looking very bad on all of those. In fact, to the point where Roger Goodell's job was pretty much on the line with the other owners. They were tired of him. They weren't happy with the way he dealt with Spygate. The Patriots got a $1 million fine for Spygate, and they lost a first-round draft pick. It was the stiffest punishment ever handed out by the league. But the other owners still didn't think it was enough, because they looked at it like the Patriots won 3 Super Bowls, and they were cheating. Now, not only did they think that the punishment wasn't enough, they thought that Roger Goodell actually colluded with the Patriots to destroy evidence. Remember, during that investigation, Roger Goodell gave him the penalty, and then there was a bunch of tapes from supposedly other games that the Patriots were illegally taping signals. Those tapes were destroyed. No one ever saw them by the league. There's never been a good explanation why that happened. But the other owners looked at that as Roger Goodell was doing a favor for his pal Bob Kraft. So now Deflategate happens, and the other owners are looking at Kraft saying, you better get it right this time. You can't, or you're done. So Tom Brady does his radio interview. The next day, the cameras come to Gillette Stadium for the press conference for the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, and that's all Bill Belichick wants to talk about is the Seahawks. And what's he asked about? Deflated footballs. So his answer is, it's funny because, normally in that situation, you would think Belichick would just say, we're here to talk about Seattle. But he didn't. That day, he said, you need to go ask Tom about that. You got to go ask the quarterback. He threw Tom under the bus, and Tom wasn't happy about it. He won't talk about that publicly, but it was a pretty clear signal that Tom was not getting the support of his coach on this. Kraft, meanwhile, comes out and says, we're going to fight this. It's outrageous. It's ridiculous. We beat them 42-7. The balls had nothing to do with it. In fact, the biggest, from where I stand, and admittedly a Patriots fan, but I think that, the biggest argument of how ridiculous Deflategate was is that after the supposedly deflated balls were taken out of the game in the Colts game and regulation balls were used, the Patriots beat them 28-0 in that second half. So I don't think deflated balls really had anything to do with it. And I think, in fact, one of the guys in the Colts gave a great quote that we have in the book, said, we could have been using beach balls and they would have still beat us today. So, time goes on and Kraft is saying he's going to fight it. And then all of a sudden, one day, Bob Kraft, 4 months later, has a surprise press conference. No one knows it's coming, down at the owners' meeting. And he says, we're going to drop our appeal and we're going to reluctantly accept the punishment that the NFL has handed out. Tom Brady didn't know that press conference was coming either. He learned about it on TV like everybody else, and he was not happy. So when he saw that, he picked up the phone and he called his union rep, a guy named DeMaurice Smith, the head of the NFLPA. He's a lawyer, former K Street lobbyist from down in D.C., pit bull, constantly fighting with Goodell. He won a string of cases. He won Bountygate, he won Bullygate, and he won the Ray Rice case. When I say won, he means he got the original punishments reduced or eliminated altogether in some cases. So him and Goodell had been adversaries for a long time. And Tom picked up the phone. He said, what the bleep, it was an F word, why aren't I getting the support on this thing that I deserve? He was not happy. His coach threw him under the bus, and now his owner threw him under the bus. So Tom Brady's on an island by himself. He has the union. So the union's got his back on this. And Tom had always been a good union representative. When they needed him for different things, collective bargaining and different fights that they had with Goodell, Brady always stepped up and did his part to help out and put his name on the proceedings and that sort of stuff, which a lot of star players don't do. So I think there was a good relationship there with Tom Brady and DeMaurice Smith. Tom appeals his suspension, and he wins. And he gets it overturned. And everyone in New England, remember, free Brady, all that stuff. And everyone's like, he won, ha-ha. And the league comes to Tom Brady, and we write about this in the book, says, look, we're going to appeal your ruling. We're going to appeal your win here, and we're going to win in court. The precedent is set. We're going to win, but we'll make a deal with you. You pay $1 million fine, but you have to implicate your 2 equipment guys for deflating the balls, and no suspension. And Tom said, no, I'm not going to do it. He wouldn't do it. So he continued the fight, and then he lost. He lost in court. And really what this was about, it was never about deflated footballs, really. It was about union versus management and it was about how far the commissioner can go. And what the court ultimately ruled was that it's called Article 46, super football nerdy stuff, but basically what it means is that the commissioner can punish as he sees fit, and the court upheld it. And it was a very bad ruling for the league, very bad ruling for the union, and obviously Tom Brady serves his suspension, not happy about it. He could have appealed that further to the Supreme Court, but I think his lawyers told him you're probably not going to win. And I think also he just wanted it over at that point. So he served his suspension. And, it was a very dark time for Brady, for his career. And, there was reports that him and his wife were having problems, and, all these reports as if, fractures in Foxborough, or the Patriots, is their reign over, and all that sort of stuff. And meanwhile, what does Tom Brady do? Well, he does what he always does. And he went out to his house in Yellowstone, found a receiver to work out with, and he worked out like a maniac, because he knew he was going to come back. He couldn't win in court, but he was going to get his redemption. And that's why we call the story The Fight for Redemption, because he wanted to redeem him. He was fighting for his legacy. Again, Spygate was all about the Patriots. Now Tom Brady's a cheater. He's serving 4 games because he cheated. And the whole league thought so. People are talking about him like all those Super Bowls, he didn't deserve them. So he comes back in that first Browns game out in Cleveland, and Bob Kraft gave us some great memories of that game, and he said it was like a home game. He said, there was tons of Patriots fans at that first game. Remember, the Browns aren't very good. Are they ever, But, more than half the stadium, Kraft said, seemed like Pats fans, and they're chanting for Tom Brady. And he goes out and he kills the Browns, threw for like 3 touchdowns, 300 yards, no interceptions. And that's just how he went for the rest of the season, just went lights out. 28 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions in 12 games. That'll never be duplicated. That sort of ratio for touchdowns to interceptions, in my opinion, be pretty tough. And then they get to the Super Bowl yet again. And now remember the 2015 Super Bowl against the Seahawks, that was supposed to be the Patriots' redemption for Spygate. They lost in 2007 to the Giants, they lost in 2011 to the Giants. They finally win against the Seahawks, but guess what? Now it's tainted by Deflategate. So all the other ones are tainted by Spygate. The Seahawks one's tainted by Deflategate. Well, they shouldn't have been here because they cheated in the Colts game. They shouldn't even be in the Super Bowl. That's what the critics will have you believe. So that Falcons game comes now. There's no more taping signals. All the balls are properly deflated. Level playing field. Undeniable to everybody. And they go out, and what happens? They start getting killed. Tom Brady's getting killed, and everyone, we write about this in the book. Twitter's going crazy. Tom Brady's finished. He's too old. And then he throws that interception, and the guy runs it back. The guy in the Falcons runs it back for a touchdown, and Tom Brady falls down. He's flopping around on the turf. Instantly becomes a meme on the internet. Everyone's, saying, look, Tom Brady's finished. He's washed up. And then they go in at halftime. And it's at that point, I think it's 21-3. They got a field goal at the end of the first half. They go in at halftime. And it's funny, all the players we talked to, there was no panic. A lot of teams at that point in that situation would be like, oh, we blew it, biggest game of our career, we're done, what are we doing? They'd be pointing fingers, yelling at each other. These guys all said everyone was just business, talking to their coaches, what are we doing next? Talking amongst their positions, everyone trying to focus on the next play, not trying to focus on getting back all 21 points and getting back in the game, just the next play. And then in the locker room, a guy named Daron Harmon, safety, stands up. He's a guy from Rutgers, was a typical Patriots guy that was really not a superstar, but he made himself into a really strong player. And he stands up and he says, this is going to be the greatest comeback that anyone's ever seen. And he knew that if they came back, it would be literally the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history. And a light bulb went off with these guys, and they all said, why not? Why not us? It's never been done before. Why not? And so they go back out, and they're all riled up. They're ready to go. And what happens? The Falcons get the ball, and they go right down and score. Now it's 28-3. And now everyone's like, well, maybe we won't come back. Maybe it is really over. Maybe Tom Brady is too old. And, the Patriots, they just couldn't get it going. Their timing was off. And if you remember the game in that third quarter, everyone was expecting, oh, they're going to turn it around. And that first half of that third quarter was awful. They were terrible. And then they get the ball back, and then they finally go down, and they finally get something going, and they score a touchdown. And now it's 28-9. And they go to kick the extra point. It goes clank off the goalpost. And I think that was the moment where everyone was like, all right, it's really not our night. And I think a lot of people thought about turning off the game, and, me included. I thought about it, didn't do it. But it really seemed like it just wasn't the Patriots' night. And, but they kept fighting. They kept, they had each other's backs, and they just chipped away. And they start chipping away, and they get another touchdown. And then everyone starts doing the math. All right, well, 2 touchdowns and 2 two-point conversions. We can tie it and go to overtime and win the game. It seemed impossible, but it happened. And it was really an incredible thing to watch. And so with, 28-3 with 7 minutes left in the third quarter, I think there was a statistic we talk about in the book. There was a graph that someone had tweeted out that the statistical probability of them winning the game was like 0.01% at that point. I mean, that's crazy. Those are stiffer odds than the Red Sox coming back from 0-3 to the Yankees in 2004. So, but they did it. They came back, and they get the touchdowns, and then they get the Julian Edelman, that crazy glue hands catch that 99 out of 100 times hits the ground, and everything just broke their way, and they won the game. And they, go to overtime, first overtime Super Bowl ever. But the best part is that who had to give Brady the trophy? Roger Goodell. And we have some great stuff in the book about that moment where, Kraft was telling us that, he was standing there and he couldn't hear. He was right next to Goodell, and he said, I could not hear a word that man was saying because the boos were so loud. He said, I've never heard boos so loud in an NFL stadium in my life. And remember, this is a guy that was a Patriots season ticket holder in the 80s when they were terrible. There was a lot of boos back then, But, and the nicest part of the story, I think, was that, Tom's mother was able to be there. And that meant a lot to Tom, and he talked to us about that in the book. And, they didn't know right up until a few days before the Super Bowl whether or not she was going to be able to go to the game because she was going through cancer treatments, and she was pretty sick. But she made it to the game, and she ended up being able to see that historic win. So, this book, when we talk about it, it's not the Tom Brady story. It's not the biography of Tom Brady. It's not the Deflategate book. It's really a snapshot of what I think will ultimately prove to be the most challenging era of Tom Brady's career, which is from Deflategate through the end of that Falcons Super Bowl. And someday, whenever he decides to stop playing, maybe it's 10 years, 5 years, who knows how long it'll be, but someday he'll finish playing, I think, and he'll be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And I think when people look back, they'll look at the 2015-2016 season, and that Falcons Super Bowl is really the epitome of who Tom Brady is and how resilient he was and how great he was. Because that fourth quarter against the Falcons, he was perfect, pretty much. And I don't think anyone's ever going to really duplicate that sort of performance under those conditions, especially with everything going on with, coming back from Deflategate, his mother being sick, and really the whole world kind of rooting for his failure. So it was pretty amazing to witness, and that's kind of why we wrote the book. So it was a lot of fun, and I think you'll enjoy reading it if you decide to pick it up. So with that, I think I'll answer some questions. No questions? There's got to be some Deflategate questions.
How one man, Goodell, has all that power that he would accept he's had a bad day, so he decides to go this way. Why isn't he a panel?
Well, that's a good question. The commissioner that's the setup that they've given it. The owners, they call them the group of 32, the 32 owners, decided that they wanted a strong commissioner that can wield this kind of power. But with Goodell, what's funny about this story too, I didn't really get into this too much, but Goodell the only job he's ever had in his life is working for the NFL. He started as like an intern, worked his way up to be an executive, and then became the commissioner. But when he was becoming the commissioner, when he was going for the commissioner job to replace Paul Tagliabue, his biggest ally was Bob Kraft. Bob Kraft saw something in Roger Goodell that he liked. He thought he was going to make a good, great commissioner. Goodell, on the other hand, looked at Kraft as kind of a father figure. So that's why when Spygate happened, everyone was like, oh, he's doing a favor for his buddy Bob Kraft, So when Deflategate happened, Goodell had to kill that narrative. And that was a big driving factor of why he did what he did. And that's why they did the sting operation rather than just, hey guys, stop, we're watching, and that's all it would have taken. And the whole thing could have been avoided, And at the end of the day, you're taking a minor equipment violation and you're turning it into a capital murder case. That's what they did. It's not much different than, the Falcons once were charged with piping noise into the stadium so the other team couldn't hear the signals. The Steelers were caught twice with deflating footballs. I think even just this preseason. You don't hear much about that. The taping of signals, the Broncos got caught doing the same thing, but when you're the best, heavy lies the crown, So.
Why do you think that, Deflategate resulted in a 4-game suspension, and the leagues can't seem to get it right with the domestic abuse,
Yeah.
and things like that? So you're seeing like 1, 2 games, like the Ray Rice video,
Mhm.
they didn't want that to get released.
Right.
He only got, 1 or 2 games, and then it got released, obviously, and no one would get one. How is the league gotten it so wrong?
Yeah.
What's your
Well, I think a couple things. One, part of the reason they came down so hard on the Patriots was because they botched all these other cases, like Ray Rice. Remember, Goodell was totally caught lying about Ray Rice. He said he didn't know anything about it, never knew, and then the tape comes out, and it came out that he already knew about the abuse, and there's all these lies and lies upon lies and lies. So he looked terrible. He lost, as I said, he lost a bunch of appeals where the union appealed him, like they appealed the Ray Rice one, and the union won that. They got his punishment reduced. But I think the answer is, the excuse the NFL gives for, Deflategate and stuff is integrity of the game. The domestic abuse stuff, while horrible, doesn't affect play on the field. With Deflategate, they were cheating, impacting the game. So it would also be like if there was a point shaving scandal, something that affects play. Spygate affect play. That's what, kind of the explanation has been. But I would agree with you that, there are character clauses in the players' contracts. And, some guys, Ray Rice was caught on tape knocking out his girlfriend in an elevator, and, that guy should probably be not allowed to play ever again. I mean, is that really the kind of guy you want to pay millions of dollars? But I think the league has just dropped the ball on that stuff, all the criminal stuff, the guns, car accidents, drunk drivings, drugs. I mean, that's another whole issue. They got a league full of junkies. All those guys are hooked on opiates. No one talks about that, and do they even test them for it? No, they don't. They hand them out in the trainer's room. So it's a pretty corrupt league. It really is.
And I actually think it seems to be an integrity issue in terms of the hopes of the integrity of the game about human beings and how this was people
Yeah.
wasn't acting.
Yeah.
You look at the guy from his name from Carolina and the Cowboys.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And they seem to think that
Ezekiel Elliott. Was that his name?
no, the gentleman he plays defense, James.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it just amazes me, I know through your work, if there's like an underlying theme on how they seem to brush that under. But to your point, when it comes to the integrity of the league, it's like, we need to put this on a pedestal.
I think it's arbitrary. I think Goodell, it's PR. I think Goodell thinks of I mean, they're making all the wrong decisions, by the way, because most people feel the way you feel, and I feel that, it should be cracked down on all of it, but I think the league just looks at it like, they can't, if they get every criminal out of the league, they're going to lose a lot of guys, a lot of great players. I think that's what they think. But in the Patriots case, it was a couple of things. It was one, the power grab, like I described, Goodell asserting power over the whole league by sending a message, we're not going to tolerate this. I'm going to punish the best team in the league and the star player as hard as I can, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. So he sends a loud message in that sense, but then when he has another chance to send a loud message on something like Ray Rice, he drops the ball. So it's just bad management, bad PR. That's what I think, and it's hypocrisy, frankly.
All the brain injury stuff that we also covered up.
Yeah.
Totally demolished doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Doctors first came out with stuff, which is way more serious
Yeah,
than either of these things. So,
I agree. Yeah.
and they really truly covered that stuff up.
Yeah. No,
But
I agree 100%. I mean, has anyone seen the movie Concussion? Yeah. I mean that's a true story, and we see it every day. You see Kevin Turner from the Patriots, Junior Seau. You see all these guys, getting divorced, guns, drugs. They leave the league and they have no support system, and their brains are, battered. It's a sad thing. So the NFL has a lot of problems. I mean, it's America's game. Everyone loves to watch it, and it's a lot of fun on Sundays to have a cookout and have all your friends over and all that. But there's some serious stuff going on that league. You get some young guys that are putting their body through hell, putting their brains through hell. Like I said, there's some drug issues. I think a lot more than any of us know. And I don't want to get too morose about it, but it's kind of sad sometimes but then you watch something like that Super Bowl and you're like, wow, what a game, The one thing I will say, though, is, I think they need to do better on the concussion stuff, and they have made advances. They're doing a little better. They need to teach the kids at a younger age, the high. First of all, I think Pop Warner should be banned. I don't think kids should be playing football until their brains are fully developed. They can play flag football or something like that, but they shouldn't be bashing heads. They've made strides. They get the better helmets now, and they've cut down on the head-to-head and all that stuff. So they're trying to do better, but it's still not good enough. It's not good enough yet, and I don't know what they're going to do about it. It's a tough issue. So. Yeah.
So wait, they don't do drug testing of any kind in the NFL?
No, they do drug testing, but they don't test for the painkillers because they're prescription drugs.
Performance enhancing.
Well, no, they test for like cocaine. I think they test for marijuana. They test for obviously heroin, like illegal narcotics, street drugs, and all the performance enhancing drugs. But they're allowed to take prescription painkillers. They can take, Percocet, Vicodin. I don't know if OxyContin is a banned one or not, but I know that they hand out the Percocet and the Vicodin in the locker rooms like candy. Any NFL player will tell you that. And the problem is, I think there's drug issues in every league. I mean, it's not specific to the NFL, but the NFL is the most violent, and it's the league with the most injuries, and it's the league where, speed and size is, you got guys. Look at that guy Trent Brown, the new guy of the Patriots. He's 6'8", 370, and he runs like a 4.6 40. I mean, these are monsters smashing into each other full speed. I mean, you watch a guy like Julian Edelman, how fast he goes over the middle, and you got a guy like Jalen Ramsey, coming across. It's like a car accident, And you look, I hate to say it, but I think we'll see some of these guys when they're older in rough shape. And we have seen it. We've seen, who was it? B.J. Raji died a couple of years ago, the BC player for the Packers, these guys just, it's a tough sport. And like I said, they put their bodies through a lot,
So you interviewed Tom in person?
Well, we spent some time with him down at camp, and then we emailed him questions, and did the interview over audio and sent us the audio files because he was out in Yellowstone. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go to Yellowstone with Tom, but
I assume you've done a lot of interviews over the years.
yeah.
It sounds like he came across to you as very genuine,
Yeah.
very honest, and I interpreting that correctly?
Yeah. So I mean, I wasn't a sports reporter at the Boston Herald, but I covered a lot of, whenever the Super Bowls happen, they'll bring the news people in because it's a big news story. So I had been to camp many times. I had met Tom Brady at a lot of events over the years. I don't want to say he's my buddy, but I've met him, and I've always found him to be a really nice guy. I knew him when he was with Bridget Moynihan. I met Bridget a couple of times too, and that was his first love, I guess, the mother of his first child. Yeah. And I've always found him to be a nice guy. And when I've been to camp and to the, seen him at the press conferences and seen him around, he doesn't duck stuff. He's good though. He's smart. He knows how to answer the things that he should answer, and he knows how to avoid the landmines. But that was kind of interesting with Deflategate, is he did kind of, from a PR standpoint, kind of mishandled that in a lot of ways. The first press conference, I think he took it lightly, made jokes about it. Not really made jokes, but he made light of it. He's like, that's ridiculous, like on that EEI thing. Like, he should have just shut up, let's figure out what's going on and get some facts before we start talking, And those text messages are very damaging. The text messages that came out in the Wells report between Tom Brady and the two deflated, the guys who were deflating the footballs allegedly. He's saying some pretty incriminating stuff. So, but I find him to be a pretty genuine guy.
I remember seeing a report that when Kraft accepted the $1 million penalty, he was hoping to deflect attention away from Tom.
Yeah.
To just have
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think, I think that from all I know from writing this book, what I think happened was, again, remember Spygate was about the organization and Belichick. I think that's also why Belichick threw Tom under the bus, because Belichick couldn't take responsibility for it, because that would be like, he'd get the death penalty at that point. If they end up penalizing the Patriots and Belichick for Deflategate, then they're done. Now it's 2 strikes, well, really 3 strikes. But so I think Kraft's strategy was, after thinking about it, he probably said, you know what, I'm going to pay the fine, lose the draft pick. Tom can fight his appeal. We got to protect the organization here, and hopefully he'll get over it. And he did. I think there was some hurt feelings there, and you see the stuff with Belichick and Brady now. I think there's some hard feelings there from this stuff. But I think Kraft and Brady mended that relationship. And we have a great moment in the book before the Falcons Super Bowl where Tom and Bob Kraft are in the tunnel before the game. They had kind of a pregame ritual where they would always talk, have a quick conversation before the game. And, Tom said, we're going to win this one for Myra, who was Bob's wife who passed away a couple years earlier. And he said, no, let's win it for your mother. And he said, let's win it for both of them. So I think at that they hugged, and I think at that point things were better. So, but listen, this is big business, and the 3 are the best. So, you get the best 3 executives at any corporation, they're going to disagree on stuff. And that's what this is,
There's all the controversy about this trainer being in the camp, out of the camp.
Yeah, I think so. Again, I think that the fractures you're seeing and that you're reading about and hearing about kind of started with Deflategate and other frustration stuff from just being together for so long. I mean, everyone fights with someone they've been with for 18 years, right? But Alex Guerrero, his trainer, he's a bit of a controversial guy. He has unconventional methods, but it works for Brady, clearly. The guy's 41 years old, and he had an MVP season last year, went to the Super Bowl. But Belichick and him, I think there's some issues there. Belichick banned him from the facilities last year, and then this year he's back, I guess, allowed into the facilities. I heard that he traveled with the team last week, or to the last preseason game, and now Edelman and Gronk are both using the same guy. So he is this kind of, physical guru, And if you, I don't, did any of you guys watch the Tom versus Time videos on Facebook? Well, Brady did these little documentaries, and they show him working out, and I mean, it's pretty amazing what the guy's doing with Tom Brady. Because Tom Brady's not like the most naturally gifted athlete. You know, he's a great mind for the game, great arm, all that stuff, but he's not a fast runner. He's not super, you know, he's not the strongest guy, but this guy has totally gotten everything out of him that he could get, you know? Very fast, yeah.
If you do think about the whole thing, the complexity, every sports person you talk to, even serious amateur sports people, whether it's a racket or a ball, they know what it feels like, they know the difference.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that Tom would have felt that ball and not know that there was a difference. You ever ask him point blank, do you feel a difference when you play the ball?
No, we didn't ask. He didn't want to talk about Deflategate with us, as you can imagine. But you know, I guess.
That's a tough thing, right?
Yeah, no. Listen, I think that what it comes. I agree, but I think what it comes down to is that Tom that's the way he likes it. Exactly, he likes it that way. So he never. That's the way he wants him. So he wouldn't have. If it was too hard, he probably would have said something.
Yeah,
You know.
the official ball, the inflation's supposed to be at a certain point,
Right.
so you would know what that is, especially.
But I don't think
He's a
that.
guy that dials things in
Yeah.
by all measures, right? Whether it's the food he eats,
Yeah.
his exercise routine, he's written a book about this.
Yeah.
So that's what makes, so I think he's, in an objective view, I think he's like, kind of killed himself, because if in all these other phases of his life, and
Yeah.
everything he does for the sport is so dialed in,
Yeah.
it's really hard to believe that he would not know the difference,
Yeah. I mean.
especially at this high pressure versus the players.
It's a good point, but my opinion is that I don't think that he was telling them I like them this way, and then they measured him and said, well, this is under, so we can't do it. I don't think he knew where under was, because as I said at the beginning, no one ever talked about deflation levels. No one ever thought. It's not like, in hockey, if you curve your stick too much, everybody knows you can shoot it better, or you can shoot it different. I won't say better, but I don't think it's a conversation among guys who played football. Correct anyone in here play football, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think anyone talks about, hey, if the ball's deflated more, we can play better. I don't think it's a competitive.
It feels different in the hand, it's got to have a difference in performance.
But it may also, for some guys, be worse. You know? Yeah.
They're talking specifically.
No, it's a good point, but I think my point is I don't think Brady knows the legal how it feels versus illegal. I think it's just this is how I like the ball to feel, and I don't think that he knew in his mind like this is under, screw it, let's do it anyway. I don't think that.
He's played so many games though, right? It's got to be the case, even if the balls are randomly inflated, he would know which ones were pretty much like, hey, consistently
Yeah.
they feel this way in my hand.
Maybe, yeah, maybe, I don't know. Might be right.
He doesn't choose his ball.
Well, each team, that's the other weird thing is the teams play with their own balls, which is kind of weird, you know. That's the other thing that could have stopped it all. The league just has the balls. Here's the balls. And that's what they should do, but they still don't.
How the opposite team inflate the ball, the opponent inflates
Yeah.
the ball.
Yeah.
I guess the question too is, well, they had this thing for the pass. Did they go around and check everybody else's ball?
No, and that's what I said. You know, the Steelers have been caught twice, and I don't know. I haven't read too much about it, but I know nothing happened to them. I don't know how they got caught, if someone said something or not. But honestly, listen. At the end of the day, the message in this book is that good point, but it's not really about that. It's really about the league asserting power over the Patriots and by the transitive property, the rest of the league. That's what it was about. It was a power play by Roger Goodell to just, put an end to the Patriots cheating forever and send the whole league a message. That's what it was. But, and the court ruling isn't about deflated balls at all. It's about union versus management. So, you can kind of debate forever whether or not he knew or didn't know, what he knew, when he knew it. Did the text messages implicate him? His phone, he destroyed his phone, all that stuff. But really, at the end of the day, it was that,
At the end of the day, the problem is Roger Goodell.
You said it, not me.
The contract just got renewed, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think they were happy with the way he dealt with Deflategate.
Outside of your talks with him, communication with him outside of football, did he express any interest in a legacy outside only football?
Brady?
Specific, yeah.
No, I mean, he talked mostly about, football and the game and stuff, but he did talk about how, his family as he's getting older, and he's been talking about this stuff a lot now. Especially, I would highly recommend watch those Tom versus Time videos if you're interested. He talks a lot about, I'm 41 now, and my kids mean so much to me, and I don't want to miss a thing, He's just kind of at that age. So, but he didn't talk about, like, what he wants to do after football. I think he's planning on playing at least 3 or 4 more years, I think, Amazingly. So, I'll take one more. Go ahead.
What's your overall feeling of Bill Belichick when he's up there? Is that?
Well, he wouldn't talk to us. So, no. Yeah. Shocker, no. And that, that's the big issue here is, even Bob Kraft, when we spent time with him, he was very guarded because he knows he doesn't, Belichick sets the tone for the organization, really. Yeah, he does. And he knows that, he doesn't want Belichick going to, saying, what are you going down that road for? We're focused on the Bengals, That it's just that machine, and it might be boring and some people might hate it, but guess what? It works. This is an unbelievable run the Patriots are on. It'll probably never be duplicated. It's better than really anything else we've seen in pro sports. The only comparables are the Canadians in the 70s and 80s and the Celtics in the 50s and 60s. You're going on 19 years now. The Patriots have won the division, I think, 17 out of the last 18 years, I believe. And you can make fun of the division all you want, but that's still 6 games they got to win. And, they've been 8 Super Bowls now, 8 or 9, 8, 9, I think, yeah. 1, 5. I mean, it's crazy. So I don't see how anyone can argue with what Belichick does or how he does it. Tough, And he's not, look, he's not warm and fuzzy in press conferences, but he hasn't done anything wrong. Like, he hasn't, he's not domestic violence, he's not a bad person, he's...
It's kind of an exhibition game when the rookie
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet he could.
Yeah.
He smiled at the end.
I always end these things like this. Look, no matter how you feel about it, we're witnessing greatness, and just enjoy it, enjoy it. And you go back and watch that Falcons game and you won't see a better football game, So with that, I want to thank you all. Thank you for coming. Thank you.